Hi everyone, I'm the Backtano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Metallica album, 72 Seasons. The 11th studio album from metal legends Metallica. James, Lars, Kirk, and Robert are back with a thrash album for the whole family. But really, Metallica has long been my favorite act in all of mainstream metal. Their early work so essential to the evolution of the genre, and even commercial peaks like the Black Album are fantastic from front to back. And for sure, you could effectively argue there are bands that are more experimental, more technical, more adventurous, and proficient, but Metallica has killer grooves and a thrilling sound, and grasped the idea of anthemic songwriting much better than a lot of their competition did. And I think that's paid off in an unbreakable legacy, because while Metallica's catalog does contain some of the greatest high points in metal, it also has some of the biggest blunders too. Like when they angered old school fans by adopting a more groove metal aesthetics in the mid-90s, also cut their hair. We also had the absolutely awful songs and production all over Saint Anger, and there's also the record that people just love to hate, that would be Lulu, the creative crossover between Metallica and the late Lou Reed, a project I respect and even like to a degree, but I can see how this record was just kind of a non-starter for fans of each artist. But yeah, despite some low points in their catalog, Metallica's place in rock history remains rock hard, and while they've definitely reached a point where they're almost too big to fail, I think they've kind of gotten out of the habit of poking the bear, as it were, or turning the public against them, whether that be through a crusade against music downloading or the wave of hate that comes with the release of a super mediocre album. And you can see them making safer decisions in their PR moves and their output now, whether they're bringing together multiple corners of the music world by inviting everyone to join in on a multi-disc covers version of the Black Album for its 30th anniversary. They put out another symphony record too. And we also had the very predictable and very bloated Hardwired to Self-Destruct that came out in 2016, which was a very low risk, low reward type of project that, yes, contained few mistakes, but also few thrills too. It was like the band was trying to deliver to fans the most agreeable version of themselves, something that calls back to the nostalgic commercial peaks of their sound decades ago, but also uproots anything that would have been genuinely subversive about their music from that time. And if that's all Metallica was planning to do with their music from here on out, they could have easily just made this their last record. However, I don't think giving up entirely is, optically speaking, very Metallica, which makes marching forward the most sensible option to take, I guess. But what do you do when you want to drop a new record but don't want to introduce any new ideas into the fold? You kind of make the same album all over again, of course. Except 72 Seasons is somehow less exciting and edgy than its predecessor, failing to even bring a track that's as intense or as edgy as the intro from that album, with its profane hooks and synced up snares and guitar riffs. But really the big shocker with 72 Seasons is that for such a long album, there is so little to say. The riffs and guitar tones across this record are pretty heavy and chunky, but as far as their sound, they're about as standard as I think a modern thrash album could get. Lars's drums do have a sharp pop to them. The recording on them's pretty good, but his performances aren't exactly attention-grabbing, and Kirk Hammett's solos aren't exactly pushing the envelope either. They mostly feel like him reliving his glory days from some of the band's most, again, mainstream moments in the 90s. And maybe what's the worst quality about some of these tracks is that the band just doesn't know when to call it quits. The opening title track here, which I do like, could have easily ended after the first solo and following chorus, because the key change and bridge and the chorus that comes after that don't really add that much to the song's overall excitement or dynamics. It's weird because the length of this album and its songs are not really direct or straight and to the point at all, yet the band isn't really doing anything with this extra time outside of bringing very basic changes, more choruses, forgettable solos, and padded out riff passages. To be clear, I'm not looking for the band to cut these songs down to 2 minutes and change, but there's a reason Lux Eterna is one of the most kick-ass tracks on this LP. Too Far Gone as well. Have we forgot we're making a metal album here? Where's the urgency? Or at least the genuine desire to add some peaks and valleys to these cuts so that there's some real drama to them. It's a roller coaster ride. The spoken word passage, for example, toward the back end of Screaming Suicide is so mid, it's so unsurprising, it's so unexciting, it doesn't really do anything for the track. It's a total flash, goes by in a breeze, despite the fact that this song deals in such a dark subject matter. Meanwhile, cuts on this thing that turn down the heat and turn down the speed are the most tedious by far. You Must Burn, for example, sounds like I'm listening to a less interesting version of Sad But True. There's also the sinister Crown of Barbed Wire, which doesn't even feature a memorable song at its core. Sad, as Metallica is usually pretty good for some melodies and some licks that will stick with you, even on some of their hokiest singles. Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that one. Furthermore, I'm kind of disappointed in the lack of ballads and subtler moments on this project too. There's a lot of runtime on this record, and most of the tracks are really just trying to go full throttle. Hate on the load and the reload era all you want, but I think a song on the level or in the attitude of a cut like Until It Sleeps, for example, would have done a lot for just kind of adding to the overall vibe of this track list. Because as it is, it's just super one-dimensional. And it stinks because James Hetfield's voice really tends to shine in these more low-key moments, and we're being robbed of that because, miraculously, still in this era of Metallica's career, his singing voice sounds amazing. If there's anything that really truly comes across as kick-ass in Metallica's music, even on their 11th record here, it's that. Because James's passion and ferocity, it's carrying a lot of these tracks, frankly. Even when he's bringing so-so word salad lyrics and rhyming criticize, scrutinize, summarize, patronize, his performance on If Darkness Had a Son is absolutely bestial, even though the tune to this one isn't even that good. But yeah, there's very little mellow James on this thing outside of a few spare build-up moments on the lengthy 11-minute closing track, which, I mean, given what I've said about long songs on this record earlier, yeah, this one's a bit drab and bloated too, even if there are a few show-stopping moments along its runtime. But we shouldn't need to expend all of these seconds and minutes just to get some fantastic, colorful, blazing, harmonized guitar solos. But yeah, this Metallica record, it's very predictable, it's very middle of the road, it's very much the band resting on its laurels, not doing anything exciting, new, subtle, really kind of flushing their versatility down the toilet as well. I mean, in this record's defense, there are a few standouts, a few highlights, and the vast majority of what is here is listenable, but is it re-listenable? And is it anything you would opt to put on over any of the band's classic albums? Not really. Feeling a strong 4 to a light 5 on this project. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Metallica, forever.